you very much, Richard, and thank you to all of our speakers. Now it's over to you. We've got about half an hour. So I think we'll take questions in three. So if people could put their hands up, and there's quite a lot of you in the room, so please do keep your points short and sweet, please. So we'll start over here. We've got the gentleman here, the gentleman behind him, and the lady in the second back row there.
Hi, Phil Kilburn, Trafford Green Party.
Can I suggest you stand up? It's going to make it easier to hear.
Yeah, Phil Kilburn, Trafford Green Party. I'd like to ask all the panel really, but I guess Natalie might want to lead. We seem very closely aligned with the NUT on education policy. Are there any points of contention between what our current education policy is and what the NUT manifesto is stating? And have we done the same thing with other teaching unions? Yeah.
Just in Natalie's defence, we only published it yesterday. So I imagine you've been very busy, so
I will.
The gentleman behind there.
Lee Burke with Waltham Forest and Redbridge. Yeah, I just want to know what everyone on the panel thinks about the cutting of SEN provision in mainstream schools in regards to, you know, what the government do to education in terms of negative effects. Because I have Asperger's syndrome, and I had a lot of support in mainstream, in my local comprehensive, and without that support, I wouldn't be able to speak in public, basically. And I just want to know, yeah, what the panel think we could do to get back the mainstream provision that's been lost in a lot of schools for SEN children.
Yeah, Jocelyn Bristol Green Party. I just wanted to ask for comment really on the idea. We've been sort of dragged into having to fight against academies and free schools and privatisation of education, but is there any, I'm just thinking that the league table system to me seems to be at the core of a lot of problems, particularly the way it's distorted our cities, the gathering of middle class schools and house prices going up around that, and it's increasing inequalities. And I'm wondering if that going back to league tables as a key policy might be a good plan.
Can you repeat the question for us, because we don't hear it?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I think there might be a microphone over there.
Okay, that'd be very helpful if you could. Would you do that?
I was just asking whether we might go to a platform of campaigning on league tables rather than putting these other ideas about academies and free schools at the forefront of policy.
Okay, who would like to go first?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Since the first question was directed at me. Yes, as has already been said, this was published yesterday. I may not have been entirely focused just on education policy in the last 24 hours. Apologies for that. I don't know of anything where we conflict. I shall refer it to our policy experts to look at the fine detail. But I think, knowing what I know about the NUT approach in general, the general approach, there's no major areas of conflict that I know of without being able to comment on the detail of that. In terms of other teaching unions, we're certainly, basically, the ATL is particularly, I had a meeting with them in Essex. It was only a local meeting, but it was very much to try to set up a relationship. And they're also producing a similar manifesto, and we've promised that we'll work with them. And, again, I don't think, basically their manifesto is less radical than the NUT manifesto. I don't think we'll have any problems agreeing with all of it. So certainly the ATL and the NUT we're working with, and anyone who has contacts or is involved in other unions, I'm very happy to talk to them too. Special educational needs provision, this is obviously a real area of grave concern. And it's like so many areas of government policy where cuts are so long-term nonsensical, because if you help people to get established, to develop their skills, to be able to function in society, that's a lot cheaper than leaving them to struggle for the rest of their life. And that's just, and I'm sure I can't quote chapter and verse, but I'm sure there's some strong Green Party policy on that. In terms of the league tables, I mean, as Martin was just pointing out from the front, I'm sure we've got policy against that. The problem is we have to be realistic in terms of that it would be very hard to entirely stop league tables existing because there are newspapers. And there'd be some sort of that. So what we've really got to do is develop the idea of a good local school and kids going to their local school. And if you read Green Party policy, it says in urban areas children should all be able to walk or cycle to school. And if you start to think about the positive impacts of that, you go to your local school, that school serves your local community, you get rid of the school run, people walk or cycle, they're fitter, just the benefits just multiply. And I think it's really important to stress that idea of a school as a centre of a community. Being, I've got a particular area of the local area where I live where we've been fighting, they haven't got a local school. And this is a very distinct geographical area, and it's a geographical area that's under a lot of pressure from developers. And one of the things that's just absolutely astonishing is in that very discrete, obvious area, there's no local secondary school. And the kids from that go to 29 different secondary schools. They scatter. Lots of them get driven, lots of them go huge distances, and the community just doesn't have the focus that the school should be. So, I think we have to resist league tables and all of that, but I think you've also got to understand that, newspapers and that would try very hard to generate something like that. So we've also got to go on the positive side of what a great thing it would be if every kid just went to the local school.
Absolutely. To pick up that last point first, the NUT had a delegation to Finland where teachers are very highly regarded, they're high-performing schools, very strong STEM education, very strong inclusion as well in the STEM system. And because they'd had a slight wobble in the PISA league tables, the government asked the teachers why they thought this must be, not you terrible teachers were going to impose all this horrible thing on you, you need a good slapping. They actually said, what do they think? And one of the things that they think has had an effect is there are a few more private schools and not all children are going to their local school. And they actually felt that had a really big detrimental effect. So what Natalie said is absolutely spot on in terms of evidence. By the way, I didn't call it a delegation, I called it therapy, to get to somewhere where they really like teachers. The cuts in SEN provision, it's a huge worry for me because, of course, all teachers want to do the best for their children, but just wanting to do it without expert help and support is a really big difference. So just wanting to help the child with Down syndrome in my class is well-meaning, but I need people who can give me concrete ways that I can help that child attain their full potential. And one of the things that's happened with the dismantling of local authorities is the dismantling of expert groups in those authorities. So you're losing the teams that you used to have who would have done just that, who would have said to me, Max, you need to do this or that, and try this system, so that I could customise it for the child in my class. What's happening instead, and we're back to money, is those children with some of the most profound needs spend most of their time with the least well-educated members of staff. And there's something really wrong with that. So we are trying to highlight this, and one of the important things to do is to tell stories about it. In general, we can produce lots of information, but stories where you personalise it, so it's not just any old child, but it's this child, and this is what's happening to them, and it's wrong. That actually gets the message across extremely well. And in terms of points of contention, there aren't any, but we are realistic that, wouldn't it be wonderful if the Green Party were in power or a position of serious influence? And there will be points of contention. There will be which of these massive things that we need to address do we address first? But that's where we would have what Richard eloquently described as the discussion amongst us and coming to some sort of consensus. And there's nothing wrong with disagreement if it is in this open, democratic way. And that's what the Green Party can lead on.
two very quick points because I know people have got more questions. Just on, first of all, local authority support for kids with special needs and other forms of support. I don't know if people really realise how desperate the situation is. In Birmingham 3 years ago, we have 400 odd schools in Birmingham, there was a central support service of about 200 staff. Now, for those 400 schools, there are 8 people. 8 people. So, of course, how can these needs be met? Secondly, just on the point of special needs, one of the prices we pay for the autonomy that Gove has given to academies is the greater opportunity for them to refuse to accept certain kids who don't bump up their exam results. And we know the statistics show that it includes that special needs kids who are more likely to be rejected by academies than they are by local authority schools. So another important reason why we should get rid of them.
Thanks, Richard.
Well,
Conscious of time, there's lots of hands up, so if you could keep questions short and responses short as well, that'd be excellent. Thank you. Yeah. Should we do this block here? So we've got so 2 ladies there and the gentleman in the front.
Hi, I'm Sue Shakespeare, Chair of Children's Committee in Brighton Home City Council, because councils can revert to a committee system, and that is what Brighton Home Council did when we as part of the change of administration. But actually, all parties were in favour of that. So it is quite a broad, it does involve people on that committee. I think my main question is about parental choice, really. I mean, we've been having a very successful campaign, hopefully. The governing body have decided against the academisation of one of our schools. Honestly, we've been accused of playing games with pupils' lives and implementing our own ideology and all that stuff. I mean, I think the main problem is parental choice, actually, in terms of schooling, in terms of the local schools, the travel to school, the league tables, you know, and I know that came a long time ago, but I just wondered what your views were on that.
Hi, I'm Lisa Marion, I'm from Brighton Hove Green Party, and I'm also a secondary school teacher and an NUT rep. And when it comes to striking, which we've done a few times over the last couple of years, I always, as an NUT rep, encourage all my members to go out, even though for some of them it's quite difficult, it's a difficult choice. But I do, because I know the effects that Gove is having on education is detrimental not just to teachers but to the students and to a whole society, because those kids that are coming through are lacking in imagination because they're not creatively taught and so on and so on. But I was disappointed yesterday to hear that we're not joining the October strike with the other unions that are going out on strike. So I just wondered if you could explain why we're choosing not to join the strike.
Hello, Martin Francis, Brent Green Party. Just to point out a couple of things that are moving our way. The London councils had a YouGov survey just a few days ago that they published, which shows that parents in London want local authorities to have a say in academies and free schools. So we're moving in the right direction on that. A couple of issues to do with our policy. On school places, we support the NUT in wanting local authorities to have the power to build new local authority schools. And we have the Too Much Too Soon campaign, which I think is very important in the early years. Richard House has just written an article in Teach Nursery about that whole campaign. Also, just for teachers here, we do have a Twitter account, Green Ed Policy. Please follow that and put issues on there. My question for the panel is that a lot of these decisions are being made locally and the campaigns are happening locally, with governors being told that they cannot speak to parents about what's going on with forced academisation or going over to academy status and so on. Stand Up for Education campaign is very good, but I'd like to see more ways of the NUT working with progressive governors, Green Party governors and Labour Party governors in schools to actually oppose the global education reform movement and get working together.
Okay. I'm happy to give more details to any NUT members here, but I'll keep it brief. I want to reassure people that we are in no way stepping back from our campaign. What we are doing is we are, because we've had obviously a turnover in teaching, our ballot results and our campaign can continue, but we're actually having a big consultation with our members, which will not conclude until after the 14th of October. So it was a very finely balanced decision at yesterday's executive. Many of us were very, very conflicted about it. I've got the consultation that is going out to our members, which has longer explanations about Stand Up for Education. What we're hoping is to reinvigorate the campaign. We will be taking more action. It is still possible that we would join with the other groups, but we certainly support the action that they're taking. And we will be seeking next week at the TUC to see how we can support much more than just saying, oh, don't do any work that members of Unison, Unite or GMB would do, in a much more active way. I can't give you details of it because we will need to talk to those unions about it. We will continue to seek every opportunity to collaborate because that is part of building a bigger movement. It hasn't been possible yet on that campaign. I'll talk more about it, but the campaign continues and we want it to be a really high pressure campaign that can influence Labour Party members, even if the Labour Party front bench aren't looking at us, but to actually have an influence in all of the political parties to do with education. And I do think that we need to develop further working with governors. I mean, for example, there are people within the National Governors Association that we do work with, but governors don't have to be trained. They don't have to have training, which I think is very worrying, really, when you think of the great weight of responsibility that is on governors' shoulders. We think trade unionists should be more involved as governors, not just representatives from business. So it is a part that we are seeking to further develop. And this is a good time to bring that up. It's a good time to actually do that at this crucial time towards the election. And just the final update, parental choice. Very often there is no real parental choice. This is a pot sold to us first of all by New Labour and then taken up by the Condemned government. Very often there is no real choice, and you'd have to say what we want is a way that where all children can get into their local school. At the moment, because they have this Let a Thousand Flowers Bloom, what we've got are children who can't get into school at all. The Vice President, Philip Harvey, is actually teaching children at the moment who are starting school at 7 because they've not had a school place. Now that is shocking. Absolutely shocking. Actually, the children quite liked it because they were at home and they liked being with their parents. And we think children should spend time with their parents. But that's real things that are happening now in London. And so you have to offset when it's real choice and when it's a choice that everybody can make to choose to go to their local school. That's what we're aiming for.
I'm aware of a lot of questions, so I'm going to be very brief, but particularly I want to focus on that parental choice issue. Because as a governor myself, in Natalie, we serve the Regent's Park estate, which is probably the most disadvantaged area in central London. And where the government school, the official school, and on the other side there's the Church of England school. And so any parent who knows anything about how to play the system plays into the Church of England school. Every child who arrived last week from Poland not speaking a word of English in grade 5 lands in Natalie. And if you spread those out, shared those two school communities, you'd have much more mixed communities. And I often come back to it, I can really shock people from the shires with this. At Natalie, I was there at the school fete, school event, all the usual things you'd usually expect, and we had a tombola. And one of the prizes in our tombola, and it's pretty representative of the prizes in our tombola, was a 1 kilo bag of sugar. And that's what a parent gave as a good donation for the tombola. And that's representative of our school community. And I bet if you go to the CLE school on the other side of the estate, They have quite different tombola prizes. And so, if you're segregating children like that by parental choice, and that's what parental choice means, it's a serious problem. I just also very briefly want to pick up part of the point what Martin said about one of the things that I think are very important about our policy I didn't mention is that we say that formal schooling should start at least a year later than it does now. Although I will pick up on what Max said, that I think politically speaking you have to be careful when you say that. Because I've seen parents more or less reel back in horror and go, another year of childcare costs. And so we're talking about formal schooling. We're not saying that there shouldn't be free provision, play-based provision that ensures that parents, both of whom are having to work, that there isn't an option there. But certainly starting the formal schooling, the sitting down, making you sit solidly at the desk with a pen for long periods of time, that should start later.